All right, I'm live. And I wasn't going to record a video today, but I saw an article through the subreddit philosophy that I wanted to discuss, so here I am doing it. Now, I'll put the link down below in the description, and the title of this is, hang on, why free will doesn't exist and what that means. And the writer of the article, which is Bret Pipkin on medium.com, again, I'll put the link down there. His contention or his idea, he's basing it on a few studies and something that Sam Harris. He quotes Sam Harris there at some point, and he says free will doesn't exist because some things are predetermined. So predetermined, in fact, that you can't actually say that consciousness is free will. Consciousness is merely the fact that we are deciding, but the idea of deciding is predetermined, something like that. And I'm reading that. I mean, he cites a few different, he cites a few papers, I think, and again, Sam Harris, and he says that basically um, free will is something that does not exist because we don't choose. There's a process, a pre-choice that is sort of activated, that goes into effect before we consciously make the physical decision. So this has to do with the physical and with the mental, and it's a very, we're talking in the microseconds, I would assume. At some point he says there that there are 700 milliseconds, 300 milliseconds, difference in between our brain deciding to do something and our body reacting. And when I say our brain decides, you can get into a whole discussion on what that is. But the point is, Brett says that free will doesn't exist, and it means that we should take a different look at our actions, and more importantly, at the actions of others. That if things happen accidentally, if things happen, I don't know what he gives there, in the article, which is worth a read. It's a relatively short article, it's a few minutes, and he gives the example of somebody accidentally murdering someone with their car, and someone who is an actual murderer predetermined, and the different how we react to them, how society reacts to them, how the judicial system reacts to them, at least in the States or in other areas of the world where there's a penalty for murder, the death penalty, for instance. And I was thinking about that. Free will is something that has always intrigued me to no end. It has to do with everything, with ourselves, our daily actions, our consciousness, what that means for us, for others, precisely the points that he brings up in his article. And I commented in that subreddit, and this is what I'm saying here. I have always been a fan of the multiplex theory, which is something I came across when I was 16 on a website. I think it was Kabbalah.com at the time, but I'm not sure. I don't even know if that website exists in that format. The point is, the multiplex theory uh, generally says this: life is like a multiplex which houses an endless amount of cinemas, screens, right? Different conditions, warmer, hotter, better seats, cheaper seats, less seats, more seats, sticky seats, comfortable seats, all kinds of them, and a screen which is wide, which is narrow, which is a tiny little cube which you need binoculars to look at, or which is so huge that you can't even grasp what you're seeing. Things of that nature. Multiplexes, cinemas of all kinds and sorts, infinity, right? An infinite amount of multiplexes. Now, in an actual multiplex in life, let's say you have 10. You've got 10 cinemas, each showing a different screen, a different film at a different time. You can buy a ticket for one of them, or two of them, or 10 of them. You can buy a ticket for all of them and book the entire theater. You can do what you want. Once you sit down in your seat and the lights go out and that movie starts, you can no longer control anything to do with that movie. The movie is what you are shown. It is out of your hands. The movie is something that exists outside of you that you are observing. It's not something you can control. You're not the director. Nobody's filming it. You can't yell cut. What you can do is say, well, this sucks. I'm going to get out of here and change theaters. And you can get up and move to a different theater. But sure enough, within that theater, you're shown something that you cannot change. In other words, you can choose the theater, but you can't choose what it shows you. That is already predetermined. Every action that you do every thought to some degree that you think, every word you utter, all of that, it changes, sometimes infinitesimally, your life. And there are tangents, and we keep going on these tangents, and that's the whole idea of the multiverse, where every decision that we make, every word, every thing that we do has an effect, and it could have, like in sliding doors, right? That's a great way of going about it, even though it's only two possibilities there. You get the idea. You could do anything, you could be anything, but it's to some degree predetermined. You can choose a lot in life. Free will does exist. Choice, personal choice, does exist. Some of it has to do with your genes, some of it has to do with things that you acquire. But there's free will to some degree, and there is determinism to some degree, which is out of your hands. And it's that combination of both. It's finding that balance, I think, that makes it possible not to live in constant existential angst and terror. Now, to think that everything is out of your hands, that means abdicating responsibility to some degree. In one of the studies that Bret Pipkin cites, he says that there was a group of people who were assigned to read a paper on how free will doesn't exist, and others who read a neutral article. The ones who read the article on how free will doesn't exist, it changed them, and it caused them to take their own accountability or responsibility less into account. It basically not conditioned them, but it got them thinking that they don't have as much control, and because of that, they are not as responsible. By the way, which is why the Torah advocates, and other religions and faiths and ways of life, they always advocate the idea of life is in your hands. Things are under your control to a degree. To what degree? That's up to you. Again, you can see it from both sides, from the flip side, always. It's what you choose to subscribe to that will determine things that are under your control and not under your control. And these things change every day, every second, for every individual based on all of their experiences in life up to this point, yada, yada, yada. So why free will doesn't exist and what it means, Bret, I respectfully disagree. Free will exists to some extent, and the lack of it definitely exists to some extent. It's not an absolute. I do not believe in absolutes. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. The only absolute, as far as I'm concerned, is God Almighty, and even God Almighty created the heavens and the earth because there was something that was necessary, to be done, something that had to be done, which means that even that absolute is not as absolute in our minds, my mind rather, but it's a relative absolute. So that's that. It's a nice article. I've heard such things before, but it's always nice to revisit this topic of what free will is, what choice is, what choice we have, what we don't, and what it means to our day-to-day life, our morality, our choices, our amounts of responsibilities, things that we take onto ourselves, things that we think about others who have or have not done or acted in such a way. It's always a wonderful topic. So I encourage you guys, anybody who's viewing this, to engage and let's have a discussion. The multiplex theory is something that I've gone with for a very long time. It may not be 100% accurate, but it certainly does reflect to a great degree the way that I conceive and think of the world that I live in and my place in it. So let's have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in the next video.